A chainsaw and a can of petrol stood on the truck bed. "Here you are, mate." Waldo dumped the toolbox down beside the bike with a jangling rattle. He grinned. "I'll let you do it, so if you bust it, it will be your fault." Val nodded his thanks and began experimenting with a couple of spanners before selecting one that would unbolt the gear lever. Waldo sat himself on a fallen tree trunk and began to roll himself a cigarette. "What you doing out here, then?" "Reminding myself how to ride a bike. It's been a few years." Val pried the gear lever off its spline. "The bike belongs to the farmer I'm working for. He lent it to me so I could get to work." "Who you working for?" "Schaefer's. I'm driving their dozer, carving out a dam for them." Waldo picked a strand of loose tobacco from the tip of his tongue. "I know 'em. Done some work for 'em myself." He replaced the cigarette in his mouth. Val glanced at him. He couldn't help but feel that the cigarette presented a significant fire hazard. The tip of it glowed amid a greying tangle of whiskers. "You picked a remote place to learn to ride." "I live pretty close." "Yeah? Where?" Val regretted giving a clue as to where he lived. How much should he say? He inspected Waldo briefly, came to a decision, and said, "I live on Schaefer's old houseboat. It's moored on the river opposite their property." Waldo nodded and lapsed into silence. The only noise came from the forest, notably from querulous minor birds harassing a kookaburra. Waldo finished his cigarette and wandered over to the truck. He hefted the chainsaw from the tray, sketched a wave, and set off into the forest, leaving Val to his own devices. Val locked the gear lever into the vise on the front of the truck and rummaged in the toolbox for something that would straighten it. He could hit it with a hammer, but instead chose to use a length of 2-inch water pipe. It would allow more precision and cause less stress. Val slipped it over the end of the lever and pulled hard. 10 minutes later, he was satisfied the lever was straight. After bolting it back into place, he sat astride the bike and booted the kickstart. The engine fired into life, startling a sulphur-crested cockatoo on a nearby branch. Its ear-piercing screech caused Val to duck involuntarily as it flapped away. What now? Val glanced at the truck. It was partly loaded with posts. Each was a handspan in diameter and a little over 2 meters in length. He could hear Waldo's chainsaw howling in the distance. Cutting and loading the posts would have to be hard work for one person. Unsure whether he was doing a wise thing, he dismounted and walked toward the sound. He had chosen the banks of the Murray River as a place of concealment, a place from where he could watch. The mighty river snaked its way through the dry mallee scrub, bringing a ribbon of stately red gums and dark, flood-irrigated farmland. Vineyards and citrus orchards flourished under its beneficence. But some of the river's wooded floodplain remained wild and untamed, and it was in this wildness that he'd chosen to hide. At first he'd seen nothing of his surroundings other than places of concealment, fields of fire, risk factors, and escape routes. But as the days passed, he began to notice the ducks, ibis, and egrets. He watched the majestically plumed nankeen heron, the ring-tailed possums, and the long-necked turtle, and collectively they had stilled him. Whilst there was plenty of death in nature, there was seldom malice, and that was so shockingly different from his experiences in life that he'd seized upon its innocence as something salvational. Away from the river's floodplain, the soil changed colour to a rust red, and the vegetation featured the iconic mallee tree. These low, multi-trunked trees thrived with minimal rain. Sadly, too many of them had been cleared to make soldier settlement blocks, farms that were barely viable. The Schaefers, for whom he worked, had told him that they budgeted for drought 1 year in 3. Fortunately, their property also straddled some black soil that could be flood irrigated. As Val crunched through the leaf litter, he reflected on the 2 weeks he'd lived along the river in secret.